the missing piece, I feel that you are in your element. And I read what you call even in 17 Morris Road. I thought that you were in your element. But before that, what was happening? I know that you have written multiple books, but did do you also feel the same way? Because I thought that it was like you were at the top of your game.
This kind of writing marks a shift in the kind of stories that I'm telling now. And I think it has got something to do with getting older, perhaps, or just wanting to revisit some of these places which have really defined my childhood, So that is the reason why during the pandemic, when I had some time and I wanted to, explore the story that I always had in me, and which was about Dehradun and what sort of a place it used to be. And I left Dehradun when I was a very small child. So I was essentially looking at it from a child's perspective, and I am fairly certain that I have romanticized it a great deal, but that was something that I wanted to really write about. And so that is really where it started. And the missing piece is, of course, very close to my heart because it's about set in Meerut, which is a sort of hometown for me amongst my many other hometowns. That also is a hometown. And I really wanted to write about that. I started writing the story almost 15 years ago. It is only now that, it has been published and it has finally come into print.
Okay, let's talk about Bulandwada.
Bulandwada is an ancient mohalla, which is in Meerut, but it could be in any small town of UP, of North India, perhaps. For me, it is really about, it was a childhood home for me. This is the kind of mohalla that my mother came from. So I've spent time, summer holidays and so on, going to visit my grandparents, spending time in the gullies and just exploring this place. And I think it's the sort of geography that never really leaves you.
Sukanya, who is visiting from London, and she's missing this huge aspect of her life, which she has been denied. I mean, her father, who, escaped with her mother to London, has told her so many stories. And
yeah. So this is a question that I have been asked before also, that, how come there was not a much bigger cultural shock that Sukanya faces when she is finally placed in that mohalla. And perhaps it has got a lot to do with my own memories of such a mohalla, which are that of extreme affection.
There's this very subtle, romance, camaraderie, whatever you call it, that's happening.
In another interview that I was doing, the interviewer called it a meet cute.
Hello, Booknerds. Welcome to the Booknerds podcast. I'm back with an amazing author, as always, but this is very special. She has written a book which is called 17 Morris Road, and it is partly based in Dehradun. And you know how we are based in Dehradun as Booknerds, and that's why we love the book. But very recently, she has launched another book, and it's called The Missing Piece, which talks about inheritance, a lot of nostalgia. It is based in two cities, London and Meerut. Well, mostly Meerut. And I had a ball reading the book. It was like amazing. The writing was so on point. It's not a review, but I'm just praising the writing because I loved it that much. So it's so on point. First of all, Parul, welcome to the Book Nerds podcast. It is your first time. We are honored to have you, and great going on the writing front.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, so I have so many questions, but a little bit about how you came to this place, because, in the missing piece, I feel that you are in your element. And I read what you call, even in 17 Morris Road, I thought that you were in your element. But before that, what was happening? I know that you have written multiple books, but did do you also feel the same way? Because I thought that it was like you were at the top of your game, right? It felt like.
Thank you so much for saying that. So you're right. This is Missing Piece is my fifth novel, and I started publishing sometime in 2009. And I wrote 3 books in quick succession at that time. But those books were all based in large cities. So they were based in Mumbai and Bombay, which I still call it.
Right.
and Bangalore and London and Goa. So those were the sort of geographies I was exploring in those books. But you're so right in pointing out that that this kind of writing marks a shift in the kind of stories that I'm telling now, and I think it has got something to do with getting older, perhaps, or just wanting to revisit some of these places which have really defined my childhood. So that is the reason why during the pandemic, when I had some time and I wanted to, explore the story that I always had in me, and which was about Dehradun and what sort of a place it used to be. And I left Dehradun when I was a very small child. So I was essentially looking at it from a child's perspective, and I am fairly certain that I have romanticized it a great deal. But that was something that I wanted to really write about. And so that is really where it started. And the missing piece is, of course, very close to my heart because it's about set in Meerut, which is a sort of hometown for me amongst my many other hometowns. That also is a hometown. And I really wanted to write about that. I started writing the story almost 15 years ago. It is only now that, it has been published and it has finally come into print and so on. So these are stories that have been, in the making for a while, but have come into print in the recent past.
Like they say that, the great dals and biryanis take their time. So it's like that, right?
Out of
So
patience, Yeah.
yeah. And looking at, I mean, I'm briefly talking about 17 Morris Road because I don't know if I'll get an opportunity to talk to you about that.
Of
But
course,
we'll come back
let's
to
do
the
it.
missing piece
Yeah.
because, you know, I loved it so much because if I would have written it from my perspective in during my childhood, I would have written it similarly. I wouldn't
Wow.
have the tropes, of course, but it
Yeah.
was so on point. And,
Really?
being I have seen the shift of Dehradun from, say, the 80s to now,
Yeah.
and it's heartbreaking. At the same time, it was a great ode to,
Hmm.
the times
Yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
by. Thank you so
Really.
much for writing it.
Of course.
Perhaps we can have another episode just for that.
I'm
Let's come.
happy to talk about the books that you have read, so we
Yeah,
can maybe divide the time and so on.
why not? Why not? So, okay, let's talk about Bulandwada. What's
Okay.
happening here? And, how did you choose this particular setting? Because
Mhm.
it's kind of very colorful. It
Mm.
has some characters are so, I have seen these characters, growing up. And by the way, I live in a mohalla still.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So I
Yeah.
have not moved out.
Huh.
I meet these characters very often. Although we build our own cocoons, right? But
Right.
we are doing our own thing. But when
Right.
you are a mohalla per se, and this is a quintessential mohalla. So tell
I'm
us
so
more
glad
about
it came
this.
across like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us more about Bulandwada and what is at stake for the
Mhm.
readers.
Well, Bulandwada is an ancient mohalla, which is in Meerut, but it could be in any small town of UP, of North India, perhaps. For me, it is really about. It was a childhood home for me. This is the kind of mohalla that my mother came from. So I've spent time, summer holidays and so on, going to visit my grandparents, spending time in the gullies and just exploring this place. And I think it's the sort of geography that never really leaves you. You can never really escape it fully. So there was some part of me which always wanted to take a very modern character and place her in bang in the middle of this place, with all of its own codes, its own sort of idiosyncrasies and so on. And I wanted to say what sort of an interaction is going to happen between the very colorful characters that you just referred to
Yes.
and such a protagonist. So that was really the genesis of the idea. But for me, it always starts with place first. So the fundamental reason for writing the story was really because I wanted to explore the mohalla once again, and this time as a writer. I wanted to really understand how did it really come about, why is it structured like this, what makes it, how is it situated in a larger world. So those were some of the questions that I wanted to deal with. And the other part was that what happens to us when we are taken away from such a home,
Right.
and if we are not allowed to return to such a place, then who do we become? And what really happens to us? You just said that, you still live in this home and that, nothing could really tear you away from this place. So
Yeah.
clearly it has a hold on us.
Mm.
Clearly it is something that captivates us at a very deep level. And
Yeah.
therefore, if such a home is denied to us, and if we are exiled from this kind of a home, what happens to us? Who do we become? What are we deprived of? Those were some of the questions that I just lived with for a really long time. And I really wanted to answer that. And I think that is really where Bulandwada, the idea of writing about this mohalla came to me. And then I started exploring it.
I think you have struck a chord here because, there are so many friends I talk to, and
Hmm.
there's this one particular friend who
Hmm.
calls me every summer. So my birthday happens to be on 7th of June. And we
Okay.
used to, do these, you remember those birthday parties growing
Yeah.
up? We
Yeah.
would do this and like
Hmm.
50, 60, 70 people would
Hmm.
show up, loads
Yeah.
of kids,
Yeah.
in the 90s.
Yeah.
This guy, he
Hmm.
remembers all of that. Okay. So he's so
Hmm.
connected with that memory. And his
Yeah.
Nani's home was just
Hmm.
adjacent to our house.
Right.
So he would just call me on that day. I know he doesn't want to wish me
Yeah.
per se, but he
Hmm.
just wants a connection, right? So
Hmm.
he just wants a connection to his home where he used to visit during the summer vacation.
Hmm.
And the same thing I felt about Sukanya, who is
Hmm.
visiting from London. And
Hmm.
she's missing this huge aspect of her
Hmm.
life, which she has been denied. I
Yeah.
mean, her father, who, escaped with her mother to London,
Hmm.
has told her so many stories.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
when she actually lands up and you narrate it in the book, that
Hmm.
it's not alien at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was that these
Hmm.
people in the
Hmm.
mohalla
Hmm.
are taking to her quite well,
Yeah.
which was strange for me. That's what I
Hmm.
wanted to ask you.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a question that I have been asked before also, that
Okay.
how come there was not a much bigger cultural shock,
Mm, mm,
that Sukanya faces when she is finally placed in that mohalla. And perhaps it has got a lot to do with my own memories of such a mohalla, which are that of extreme affection, which are that of almost kind of unbridled acceptance, and a lot of love and so on. Now this could very well be just me, looking at it with a very positive sort of view. It could be that. Um, but it is also that something that I've experienced. I think if a character like this, um, who is the granddaughter of Bade Papa and Badi Mummy, who are the sort of the stalwarts, the veterans of that
right.
mohalla. Their granddaughter finally returns home. I think she would see this kind of affection, she would see this kind of acceptance. And the thing is that she does see a lot of bigotry also.
Mm,
She experiences that, right? She sees a lot of casteism at play. She sees a lot of prejudices at play. But perhaps because her need to be in that place is so strong that she is stating it, but then also moving on. Also, the fact is that we know throughout that this is going to be a temporary stay for her. She's not
right.
there to stay at, forever.
Right.
So when we look at a place as a visitor, we know that, this is not something that we have to put up with for an entire lifetime and so on. And I think that has got something to do with the fact that she is so accepting of these other prejudices that she is confronted with. And also the fact perhaps that therefore there is a little bit of Mehman Nawazi that is going on in the mohalla, and, she's experiencing that. So
Yeah.
maybe that experience, that.
Yeah. You used a very beautiful word. And throughout the book, some words are just thrown like that, Hindi words and Urdu
Right.
words. You have also experimented with some, poetry and, all of
Yeah.
that. And I
Yeah.
noticed that in 17 Morris Road as well. There
Yes.
was these, English
Yeah.
poetry thrown in and sometimes
Hmm.
Urdu. And
Yeah.
especially in the missing piece, through Bade Papa, you have created
Mm.
this character who
Yeah.
has a harmonium. He's like
Mm.
he's in his own world. He just
Yeah.
enjoys poetry.
Yeah.
He's an
Mm.
old,
Mm.
soul, and
Yeah.
he's just enjoying his music, a
Yeah.
scotch with it, all of
Yeah.
that. Are you like that also, or what's happening? And you could have easily not used these words
Yeah. Yeah.
because to explain it to somebody from the West who might
Yeah.
be reading the book, it gets quite tough,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, it
So how
does.
do you
It
deal
does.
with that as a writer?
Yeah. So it was. It was a conscious decision, really, because my editor and I, we knew that we wanted to use the Hindi words and the Urdu words as part of the overall language that has been used in the book. And we did not want these words to stand out in any way. That is the reason why they have not been italicized at all. They are treated the same way as any other English word because it has to be woven in, You cannot if you start doing that, then it starts to stand out, and then you start to explain. But when the primary objective is really to create a world and a feeling, it has to move you in a certain direction that I want you to be moved in, and I can't do that if in every sentence I'm breaking it to sort of explain to you that this is what a chabutra means, or this is what a katurdan means, etc. So that is the reason why I keep all three languages exactly the same. So whether it's Urdu or it's Hindi or it's English, I'll treat them the same, and then you will find that you're weaving some sort of a tapestry which will come across as a whole to the reader and not. And then one of the other ideas that we had was that maybe we should have a glossary at the end. Explaining all the words, but then it would have become like a very academic work, and the whole idea is to, transport the reader into this certain place and a certain time. So that is the reason why. So if I what we read when we read in English, for example, or somebody like Juno Diaz or so on, who use Spanish words, the sprinkling, it is more than a sprinkling. It's almost a deluge of, of Spanish words that he uses in his English text. And it does not take away from the experience at all, We will probably just like look these words up and then be a little more educated. And I think it's a good way to be. Yeah.
In the age of AI, and you can just dictate, get the meaning. I think it makes sense just to stay true to the core
Yeah. So
and
that
sort
was
of
really the idea for this thing. And
even
I am equally conversant in these languages. So this is the way I do speak also. So it is, yeah. Yeah.
we should have done
And we can still switch. Anytime you want, just let me know. Happy to do
I'm
it.
so used to doing this in English, like it's crazy. So it's going back into Hindi and Urdu, it gets
Yeah.
tougher sometimes. But anyways, you're right that even the modern, in pop culture, like the K-pop songs, all of that, they don't
Yeah.
even try to explain. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you figure it out.
Absolutely. You
We are
figure it
here to
out.
stay. You figure it out. So
Yeah.
my daughters are know half of the Korean language because of that. So it's crazy how
It's
they are
really
kind of
interesting.
popularizing their culture because of
Yes,
that.
of course.
If you want to figure out a chabutra or a Haveli, you'll figure it out.
I'm sure you will.
So, okay, let's talk about
Yeah.
the Haveli, the Nawabo ki
Yeah.
Haveli. And I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to give spoilers because
Okay.
it's a big spoiler in the narrative. But
Uh-huh.
what's happening there? Where does it fit in to the entire tapestry? You have built
Yeah.
a lot of these places within the mohalla. But
Yeah.
what about Nawabo ki Haveli? It sounds very intriguing, almost Lucknow-esque, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was the point, really, to create a place of intrigue within the mohalla. And it is also to, sort of establish that a mohalla is not a uniform thing. Even within that, there are um, the categories of houses, and there are different sorts of people who live there. It is not a uniform mass of people. It's not just one standard cohort that we are dealing with. There are multiple sort of personalities and people who come from different backgrounds. And therefore, I wanted to create a pocket in the mohalla which is not that accessible, and to create a sense of intrigue about what is really happening behind these giant fatak, that is behind that, what is really going on. And therefore, the whole idea of placing these characters, that you can't really fathom at first glance, and they're definitely what they appear to be. So I think, there's a metaphor there also about, how things are, what is really going on behind those gates, we don't know. And
Right.
we want to find out. So that
Mm.
is the reason for Nawabo Ki Haveli. And with that word, I think when you say Nawabo Ki Haveli, it does create a certain sense of mystery, and you want to know what is transpiring there.
Absolutely. I really wanted to know. I think it was left. I mean, of course, we didn't have space for it.
Yes, just
that
about that.
Haveli
Yeah.
exists,
You
a
should let my
spin-off.
editor know. So
उनको मैं
there's
बता
space
दूंगा,
for a sequel.
उनको मैं हशैद को मैं बता दूंगा कि उसमें
Yeah,
आप
absolutely.
करिए,
Ah,
इसको इस पे ध्यान दीजिए.
mm.
Okay, there's this very subtle, romance,
Yeah,
camaraderie, whatever you call it, that's happening with
yeah,
Sukanya. She has got that typical British humor, and
yeah,
and then she meets this guy who
yeah,
is at Haveli. His
yeah.
name is Aman, and
Mm.
then of course she meets the bad guy. There has
Mm.
to be a bad
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
I
Mm.
mean, we can call
Mm.
him not the bad guy, but
Yeah.
he's the guy whom I would tell my sister to stay away in a mohalla.
I
I
think
think
that pretty
he,
much describes him.
yeah, because I've
Yeah, that
seen them.
describes.
I've seen them
He's the
up close.
forbidden guy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's the forbidden guy, and the
yeah,
girls would always go for that guy.
yeah, yeah.
So tell
Absolutely.
us about what's simmering here, what's happening here. Where is Sukanya?
So yeah, so once again, like I think you have put it in such an interesting fashion, right? And it's also very accurate that we have this girl who should not by any account be mingling with any of these characters, right? Because number one, she doesn't know anything about them, and number two, both seem to come with their own set of problems. So but isn't that what makes them almost irresistible to a girl like that, right? I mean, it is the fact that somebody so just to go off topic, but in another interview that I was doing, the interviewer called it a meet cute. So so yeah, so I found that fascinating. I said, I need to learn more about how does one write meet cutes, and what is
I
going on
have
there.
no clue. I have no clue. I'm 40 years old. I have no clue what the meet cute is.
I'm almost 50 and I have no clue either. So so that was interesting. But that apart, so essentially the idea was to create this forbidden kind of situation with Sudhir Tyagi essentially standing in for a rebel, somebody who is just bad news in every possible way. He's involved with anybody who thinks that he has a career in UP politics, and that is where he is. His heart is calling him, and so on. A girl like Sukanya should be staying away from him, right? By all
Yeah,
on all counts.
yeah,
And then we know that Aman has got some sort of a substance abuse problem, and he also does not seem to be telling the truth, and so therefore the whole idea is to create those conflicts,
yeah.
and
And
so,
and
so that is really where the
Mr.
thing comes from.
Tyagi
Yeah,
also recites Shakespeare, so it is a meet cute then.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
absolutely
yeah, yeah, yeah.
crazy.
So that is what makes him so it's fascinating, right? That
Yeah.
but you
Shakespearean
live in such a
hero.
place and know that these characters exist. So yeah,
Shakespearean hero in the narrow gullies of
in the
Meerut.
Nebrogans of
Wow.
Bulandwada. Yeah,
That
that's
that
who he
sounds
is.
like something. I
Uh,
know of someone who was like that in my childhood, and I
There you
used to
go.
visit Lucknow very often. And like I was 7, 8 years old, and
Yeah.
he would be he would
Uh,
be say 12, 13, 13, or
uh,
he would
uh,
recite all these things, and it was a
mm,
mohalla after all. And I'm like,
correct.
what's this crazy guy? Talking in
Mm.
English all the time. So
Yeah.
he was preparing himself for something bigger. And he's a
Yeah.
PhD in English and professor in the States now.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
he'll watch this, he'll understand, what I'm talking about. You find
Yeah.
these characters
Yeah.
and super interesting.
Mm.
Okay,
Okay.
a bit about the writing, because
Yeah.
once you're
Mm.
writing something like this, it has to be really on point, like you said before
Mm.
as well. If you
Yeah.
get slightly off, in
Mm.
terms of
Lose
how
the.
you narrate
Mm.
the story, it can come off as
Mm.
like maybe wannabe or something like that.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
if you have to really get it accurate, because people like me will
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not
If it's
genuine.
not
So
authentic. Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
if we have spent our time in
Mm.
UP and Uttarakhand and all of
Yeah.
those places, in the
Yeah.
smaller
Yeah.
towns especially,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
understand, we'll get it.
Absolutely.
And you're writing about Dehradun as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, my guard is up. I'm like, don't get Landor wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hope I did it justice, because these places are
That's why
very
I'm
close to my
happy.
heart also. Yeah.
That's why I'm happy. It's crazy how
Yeah.
accurate it is.
Okay.
Somebody who is okay. First of
Yeah.
all, your discussions with the team,
Yeah. Mm,
editorial team.
mm.
Where would they draw the line, or what did they cut? Did they cut anything? And what was happening there? A little bit.
In Morris Road, my editor had wanted to extend the story.
Okay.
Um, so she had wanted a little bit more, and so that is so. It was not really cutting as much as wanting more
Okay.
of the story, and
Okay.
so because she had felt that the logical end
Right.
is not where I had imagined it, but it's a little bit further, so I have to sort of push the story a little bit more, which I agreed with because it did make it a better story.
Hmm.
But there's not really too much cutting of details going on. As far as getting it, because you just talked about how important it is to come across as authentic when
Hmm.
you're talking about these small towns, that you're talking about a certain time and a certain place. I think it's important to stay with the feeling, that it's very important to guard that feeling, a certain mood, because the mood is what has to finally transfer from the writer to the reader. So
Right.
one is that you guard it really strong. And the second thing is that you have to do your research very well, because, it should not come across as research, and it should not come
Right.
across as adding factual details for the sake of doing that. But at the same time, like you said, it is very important to get the details just right, which you cannot do if you're just writing, from imagination. You have to root it in, uh, the history of the place, the facts of the place, the architecture of the place, the food culture,
Right.
the politics.
Yeah. So much. And you have touched upon all of these things. I mean,
Yeah. So,
cast in the missing piece, cast is, and you have mentioned it multiple times, and
yeah,
you have to mention it because it's Uttar Pradesh. You have to mention it. There's
correct.
politics. There's a lot going on in terms of what's happening with Sudhir Tyagi. There is an incident also later in the book. All of
Yeah.
that, but you
Mm.
stayed away from much of the violence, and
Yeah.
that I was happy with
Yeah.
that because
Yeah.
I wanted to read a very sort
Yeah.
of happy, light account when it came to this book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
did you explore that
I
going
did.
kind of
I
because
did.
it's a side, right?
Yeah, but what I felt also was one that those kind of stories about UP are oft told. So the going in hypothesis about Uttar Pradesh is that a UP story has to be a violent one, and I totally understand
Mirzapur,
where that comes from.
Mirzapur bana.
Yeah. So, I agree. I mean, there is really no getting away from that. But there is another part of the
Mm,
story that needs to be explored also. And I think, there are other voices that need to be heard. There are other stories that need to be told. And I think maybe with the missing piece, we are trying to explore that side of UP, that side of Meerut. Of course, you have to touch upon the sugarcane politics. You have to talk about, what
yes.
all of that. You have to talk about the casteism and all. You cannot create that structure without touching upon those things. But there is more to it than that, is essentially what I was trying to, I think, get at.
Uh, the aspect of longing
Yeah.
which Sukanya's parents are going through,
Yeah.
and it starts early in the book, and
Mm.
then there's a parallel drawn to another couple that you are talking about later in the book. There is
Yes.
a marriage that's happening, and
Yeah.
there's an affair that's
Yeah.
simmering
Yeah.
in Bulandwada. How did you kind of try to? Because if you haven't experienced it somehow,
Yeah.
it's tough to kind of pinpoint like what
Yeah.
would this person be feeling,
Hmm.
when you are
Hmm.
estranged from your family, whatever,
Hmm.
all those things. How does one get it like on point? And
Yeah.
what your experience with that?
Yeah. I think you're right. It is a difficult thing to put in a story. But homesickness and nostalgia, these are things that I'm very interested in.
Okay.
The whole pain of just wanting to return home. So these are, I mean, you have seen this in 17 Morris Road also.
Yeah.
So these days I'm writing stories which are dealing with sort of the same themes.
Okay.
So because I'm delving into the whole aspect of homesickness, exile becomes just one facet.
Right.
through which you can explore that homesickness then. And also the idea was that this homesickness is something that has to be transferred to the child. She has to grow up feeling as if there is something missing in her life. That could not have happened unless the parents missed their homes all the time and they missed it deeply. And also, they were able to talk about it to the child and transfer elements of that to her, almost like a legacy.
Yeah.
Only then would she grow up to say that, come what may, I must explore this place. I must visit it. I must go back and see for myself, what is this missing piece of me, that is out there
Yeah.
in some old crumbling, mohalla.
What about your readers? It has been a bit, with 17
Yeah,
Morris Road and the
yeah,
missing piece.
yeah,
And you have friends abroad as well. You must be
yeah,
talking to them. Your readers
yeah,
must be there as well.
yeah,
I'm, I figure. So what
yeah.
what has been what is the feedback that you are getting? Because I'm interested in that because I haven't spoken to other readers regarding this.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's been very positive, and it's
Okay.
been very heartening. When people like when they say that it reminds me of 17 Morris Road, reminded them of how Dehradun used to be, how it was to be in the 80s, what it was
Mm.
like to be an 80s kid, what did it entail really, and they felt that that in the case of 17 Morris Road, the overwhelming response was always that I felt so nostalgic. When I finally finished the book, I was left with this overwhelming, feeling of nostalgia. That was what, and that was really the purpose of writing it. So for me, it counts as a success anytime. Somebody says that they felt that,
Right.
because that is really what I was after, that
Right.
homesickness. And the missing piece is really, it's a love letter really to the small towns of
Yeah.
of India.
Mm.
So if anyone feels that, they feel the charm of what these narrow gullies hold within themselves, and if they can see the relationships and what they meant to people back then, if they can see that it is beyond all the violence and beyond all the casteism, there's also poetry, there is also amazing food,
Yeah.
there is also a lot of love and so on. Every time somebody recognizes that, I feel like all the hard work, all the years spending that I've spent writing this story, they've all been worth it.
Absolutely. Because I was imagining only Lucknow because that is my memory, right? So
Right.
the similar things I would, encounter and,
Yeah.
it was so much. And I'm feeling bad because I haven't been to Lucknow now for like 7, 8 years. And
Yeah.
I have to go now and kind of, revisit all of
Great.
that.
Like one of
It
my
was
friends said that, it's like you're doing a lot of work for the tourism. To be
absolutely you are. Absolutely you are. No doubt about it. Any complaints from the readers that you have received? Like, okay, we didn't like this or this could have been better, something like that.
or not, unless I mentioned that they wanted the culture shock to have been more perhaps
Jarring.
louder in a way, and this thing that I treated it with a very subtle hand and so on. So maybe that was something that in according to a reader that I spoke to, that could have been dialed down, and
Right.
she should have been treated, or there should have been fat shaming, and there should have been all sorts of things said about her accent and so on, that.
But haven't we seen that all in Bollywood? And we have seen it all.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's jarring, but it gets predictable because
yeah,
I mean, it's now the entire gap between, say a US
yeah,
citizen or whatever. And there's the internet. Everybody knows everything now. So it will cease to be that jarring going
yeah,
forward as
perhaps.
well. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think maybe,
Could be.
yeah. Okay. What else? Yeah. The dual nature of small towns. I mean,
Yeah.
or what else? I have so many notes. It's crazy.
It's okay.
Just give me a moment.
Of course.
Uh, uh, uh. Oh, yes. I totally
Mm.
forgot. I wanted to talk to you about the shadi that's happening and how you have
Okay.
described it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I could totally see myself, being
Uh-huh.
there and in a
Yeah.
small town shadi,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that. I'm
Yeah.
guessing that you have seen it all,
Of
but the
course.
detailing is very
Mm.
good. I mean,
Mm.
I was also learning because, there are some terms and words which were slightly alien to me, but बहुत मजा आया वो वाला जो सीक्वेंस था ना. It was crazy. It was very visual. So tell us more about when you were writing that. What
Of
was
course.
happening in your head?
Yeah. So, the whole idea was really to treat the celebrations of, that are part of this wedding as it's a narrative device, and it
Right.
is working towards moving the story forward. So
Yeah.
every single time there is a marriage function, something happens within that
Yeah.
moves the story forward. So it is not just to, give some sort of cultural landscape to the story. But the whole idea is that, there is almost a sense of doom that you're creating. The reader should be left feeling, will this wedding go through or not? Will
Yeah.
this girl actually end up getting married to this bundu
Mm.
that, the parents have selected for her? Or is there something which is, larger at stake? So I wanted to just create that, there is also reference to the fact that, the girl is Manglic, and there is,
Yes.
so on and so forth, so there's a little bit of what I wanted to leave the reader feeling as if all is not well as far as the wedding is concerned, and that the closer we get to the actual, you know, there'll definitely be something that will result in a culmination of sorts, which is what I have tried to create, in the final sort of I mean, I will not give it away. In case one of your viewers
Obviously,
wants to,
we can't. We can't. That's why I haven't
to read
mentioned
it.
most of
Yeah,
the things because
yeah,
I don't want to give a spoiler.
yeah.
Do you reread your books because you know your text pretty well, more than
Yeah.
most authors? You reread
Okay.
your books or you just remember?
Well, do go through a lot of drafts,
Okay.
when it comes to
So after publishing, after publishing,
after publishing, not really. Not
okay,
really. But I've spent a lot of with these two stories, and I've spent so many years with them that
that is why.
yeah, so that they're sort
Because
of
many
I've
times what
absorbed
happens
them.
is, yeah, it many times what happens is that I mention something and the author is blank because they don't remember. I have to mention the page ki yaar is page pe tha, so you have to go back. So
Okay.
it's quite since you
Part
have
of it could also be my training as a researcher, because I'm used to sort of holding large amounts of data in my head, because you never know
absolutely
what the client might ask you. So it could
yes we
also
did
be that, that,
yeah.
yeah.
I think
It,
that's a great quality because you go on podcasts and interviews, etc., etc.
yeah.
That could be embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
My final question, Parul,
Yeah.
and this is the Booknerds podcast. Let's talk about your inspirations. You have mentioned some in your, bio, short bio
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Amazon,
Yeah.
etc. That
Yeah.
you are inspired by Ruskin Bond and the
Yeah.
classics, all of that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
something off late that has kind of enticed you, which you would like
Yeah.
to recommend.
I love Anne Patchett very
Okay,
much. So I'm reading Whistler by
okay,
her right now,
okay,
which is, I think, a
okay.
wonderful book. The one that I had read prior to this one, which was Tom Lake, had not really done it for me. So, it's a little bit disappointing, when you love an author so much and then one of her books doesn't, really go down that well with you. So I'm actually very happy that with Bisla, we are once again on good terms, and, I'm really enjoying it. And other than that, I read a lot of Hindi novels also. um, right now, because I'm working on my next novel, so there is a fair amount of research that is going into that. So I'm reading books which can help inform me about that period. That's a little bit more historical in nature. That book, so I'm reading several books regarding that period.
But isn't the Hindi writing, Hindi books are doing really well now? I mean, that's such a good thing, right? The Nai Hindi, as they call it.
Yeah,
Right?
so that I would not really know so much about. I really
But,
should, but Hindi novels are not that readily available in Singapore, so
yeah.
I'll have to source them from India. I
Mm,
haven't really read a lot of recent
yeah.
Hindi work.
Mm,
What I normally read is the classics and so on.
I- yeah.
Uh,
You mentioned
so
Shivani and
Shivani is,
Sid.
of course, my
Yes,
my
yeah.
eternal inspiration. I always say that the reason why I'm a writer is because entirely because of her work. Because I grew up even before I was supposed to read her novels, I was hiding and reading her novels. So
That's amazing.
that
That's
is,
amazing.
yeah. So that is really it's something
Yeah.
that, and I would advise everybody to maybe uh, the thing is that we read. that kind of writing today, and maybe today's generation may find some of those things not entirely acceptable or agreeable and so on. But just for the sake of the writing itself, how to really hold a reader's interest over 500, 600 odd pages. How does one do that? That is, I think, really a masterclass that you can learn
That's
from any of Shivani's works.
that's
Yeah.
so apt because you know some of these Japanese novels that are coming out.
Yes. Yes.
Then I just picked up, the Honjin Murders, which is
Yeah.
a classic. And I was like, the writing is okay. I mean, I'm not kind of, I can't associate myself to, I'm not understanding it completely, but a great story nonetheless. So
Yeah.
it's like that. You're so
Yeah.
right that some things have to be just read for the writing, the
For the
experience.
writing. Yeah. 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 Some are for the story, and then there's some stuff that you just have to read for just how
Yeah.
beautiful the prose is.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Glad we met on LinkedIn somehow. I don't know. I have
Yes.
no clue how we met on
It was meant to
LinkedIn, but
be.
yes, it was meant to be because I found, and I, talked about this in a random podcast also.
Huh.
I don't remember also. I was
Huh.
talking to some author and I'm like recommending your book and the author was looking at me. Like, "Kya bol raha hai?" It's crazy, but
Okay.
it happens when you are in some zone. Recommend that book everywhere.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you so much for talking to me. And it has been amazing. I think I've had so much fun talking to you and talking to someone who understands, this longing, nostalgia of being in hometowns, missing hometowns, being
yes.
homesick,
Yeah.
all of that. I mean, it was so much, it was so endearing, to be honest.
Thank
And
you.
I wish you best of luck for the next works.
Thank you
I'm
so
sure
much.
they are going to be even better. And
Thank you.
thank you for being on the Booknerds podcast.
It was my pleasure. I had so much fun talking to you.